Alrighty, hello everybody. So for today's video, I wanted to real quickly just talk about 5 characters you can learn as a newer support player and what general items you want to build to them as of this current 10.7 bonus patch. So specifically this video, I will be talking about what characters I think you should learn first in order to encourage some really good habits when you're first learning how to support in Smite. Or maybe you're an intermediate player, you can still learn a thing or two here. But also just some general builds on what to build in these characters. That way, you won't go into a game blind. I'll also give you some basic basic tips and tricks on the character. Not really like a guide style per se, because this is going to be a pretty short video, hopefully. But I'll essentially give you a quick breakdown of what they do and a general good idea of what type of items you'd want on them and why I think this is a good character for you to learn if you're new to support in Smite. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and begin with our first character. All right, so first off, we have Ymir. Ymir is a really good character to learn when you're first trying to learn how to play support in Smite, because Ymir offers a few different things to the team. Ymir is the first support character you get when you download Smite, so he's also, free in that regard, which obviously makes him good. But just generally speaking, he's a pretty good character, and right now he's not too bad either. So the basic rundown of why I think Ymir is a good early game or early support pickup to learn is because he teaches you how to start learning how to control, as well as how to learn how to peel while also engaging. And it also teaches you some good positioning habits as well, due to him not having any movement speed abilities in his kit, like a leap or just like a buff or anything like that. Plus 3 of Ymir's abilities are self roots, which inherently make him a little bit more difficult to play because you can actually prevent yourself from moving around. So getting good at him can help you really learn some good habits early on, like how to position well, how to play a little bit smarter, and thus I just think he's a really good pick to learn early on. Ymir's kit consists of a wall that cannot be passed through, and it can also block certain skill shots like auto attacks and some abilities. His second ability is a line ability that damages and slows enemy gods, right? And I think it also slows minions too, but I don't think that really matters. His third ability is a cone stun that can affect multiple people. The more you level both the stun and the wall, it'll increase the duration, so that's pretty important. And then his last ability is a big AoE damage ultimate that also slows enemies. Ymir can wait that full channel time in his ultimate, or he can cancel it early for an instant burst of damage, but it does a little bit less damage than if you were to fully charge it. Generally speaking, as Ymir, what you want to do is you can use your wall to block off escape options. So for instance, let's say this Odebot's an enemy player that's about to die. This is their only way out. You could use your wall to block them from going. A good tip on Ymir is to hold your wall if the character has a leap, because then once they leap, you can wall them off, and then if they just never leap, then you're just winning right then and there. Generally speaking, items you want to build on Ymir, he uses all 3 of the starter items really good right now: Sentinel's Gift, Benevolence, and War Flag. War Flag actually helps a lot because his passive, whenever he hits an enemy god with an ability, he flicks with Frostbite. Frostbite lets your basic attacks do 100% extra damage to enemy gods. It also makes them deal 10% less damage. So because he has that high extra early game damage, War Flag helps him a lot, because in that early game you can actually dominate really easily. But he uses all 3 really well. Generally speaking, though, you do want to build a little bit more movement speed on him, simply because he does have those self roots. So consider items like a winged blade or something like that. Other than that, he wants cooldown, so items like Pridwin, Spirit Robe, maybe a Prophetic Cloak. You can get anti-heal on him, but generally speaking, you want a little bit of movement speed in your build, just because, again, those self roots are pretty nasty, so be on the lookout for that. And that is the first character. Let's go ahead and move on to character number 2. All right, next up we have Geb. Geb is a great character to learn if you're new to support. Geb is a pretty hardcore peel support, but he's also a really good engage as well. He's one of the best guardians in the game that uses blink, being able to blink ult into the knock up, into the slow. He combos really well with his teammates, and he gives his teammates an incredibly large health shield that, if you read, scales off of Geb's level, plus it has base health. So with that in mind, he's a really good guardian to learn if you want to learn how to peel better and also just make better decisions. because then it teaches you how to learn who to prioritize healing in team fights. So for instance, because you only get one shield. So do you want to use it on your carry? Do you want to use it on your mid laner? Do you want to use it on your jungler? Who is doing the most damage and whatnot? So really experiment with them, try some stuff out, learn for yourself in what situation you'd want to shield who and why. And also a big tip I can give you for Geb when you're first learning him is don't be afraid to just shield early. It's a good ability, and you can be smart with it because it does also give a CC cleanse as well. So for instance, if somebody's being Fenrir ulted, you can hit them with your shield and they will leave the Fenrir ult immediately. So you want to generally save it for those, but don't be afraid to just shield somebody if they're about to take a boatload of damage, because that shield will negate all of that. Generally speaking on Geb, you want to build a little bit more backline items with damage thrown in later on, because late game, once you level this ult and have some damage items, it'll actually melt the enemy backliner, see if you get a good blink play off. So we're talking items like Sentinel's Gift or Benevolence. I don't really recommend a War Flag on him. Get one of these two. I think personally you'd want to go Gauntlet of Thebes over Cloak, but you could go Cloak on him. I just think Thebes works better for him. And then after that, you want cooldown items. So Pridwin, Spear Robe, stuff like that. And then generally, in terms of the damage items you'd want, I like to finish off with a last item. Where is it? Ethereal Staff. Even with the nerfs, this is a really good last item tank item. Or you can get a pen item, like a Divine Ruin. Obsidian Charge is okay, but the Spear of Magus is better, and then Divine Ruin is, or what you're talking about, and then Spear of Desolation is good if you want more cooldown. So generally speaking, items like that. With a full tank build plus 1 or 2 damage items, if I just show you real quickly, because it's pretty sick nasty. So let's go Thebes, and then we go sort of Binding, because that's just support meta right now. It's one of the best support items in the game. We get Pridwin. Let's go damage Pridwin for fun times. Let's upgrade this to get that. Stack our Thebes. Look at that. We're at 260, 230. We don't really need more prots, but let's get some more prots anyway. Let's say we get like a Spirit Robe, and then we get that last item, E-Staff. And then let's get Fire Blink just for the hell of it, and then like a Sunder, because these are like just the best relics right now, IMO. All right, now just to show you Geb's combo one more time, let's go against a squishy character to make it even better. You blink in. It's not letting me blink, so 1 second. You blink in, ult, knock up into the slow, and they kind of just die. Now, of course, obviously that's with the fire blink, so that's going to do a lot of damage. But generally speaking, you're going to be able to do that same combo no matter what, as long as you hit your stuff. Let me just show you again real quickly without using the fire blink. So if I just hit the ult knock up into the one, you can see just how much damage he can still do even without that fire blink proc. Very nasty stuff. And of course, you know, he's still extremely tanky, and he has an anti-crit passive, which makes him a very safe character, especially because in a lot of lower end lobbies, people build crit no matter what. So you can get kind of pub stomped that way. So that's Geb. Let's go ahead and move on to our next character. All right, and then next up we have Ganesha. Ganesha is actually an odd choice for me, simply because I actually think he does encourage some bad habits early on if you're not experienced with support. But I do want to mention him because for that exact same reason, he could be a really good early support pick if you struggle with things like farm. So real quick breakdown, Ganesha's passive prevents him from getting last hits when he's within an assist range. So if you see, I'm nowhere near my allied god, so I have a big elephant symbol here. But if I hit change team real quickly and I walk close to my teammates, you know, I'm within assist range, this opens up. And now if I were to last hit any enemy god or lane minion, that kill credit would go to my teammates instead, granting them the stacks or bonus gold. And then you get a little number here that shows you how many times you've bestowed a kill to your teammates. He's a really good character in that regard because it allows you to last hit minions in the dual lane or the mid lane really without having to worry about giving stacks to your ADC, because it just straight gives the stacks to your ADC. However, like I said, that does encourage some bad habits sometimes when you're new, and then you just get used to one-shotting the waves. But if you're somebody who doesn't really want to worry about that right now, Ganesha is a great pickup. It also extends his assist range so he can farm from a little bit farther away than most support, so that's really nice. But other than that, Ganesha's kit is really cool. He has, even though that's really cool, he has some other cool things. His first ability, every time you hit an enemy minion or enemy god, you grant your closest allies a stack of extra damage done. See? And it's also a line ability that just does damage to enemies. His second ability is a cone silence that also grants protections to him and his teammates in a circle. So you can see this circle, I'm giving protections. And then that frontward part of the ability, the breath part, is the actual silence, preventing enemies from being able to use their abilities. This makes Ganesha really good into backline dive comps, but it actually makes him pretty bad into auto attack comps because he doesn't really have a way to peel auto attack characters off of his teammates. His third ability does help with that a little bit, but still not great. It is a dash that also slightly knocks up, and I believe it stuns them while he dashes onto them. So you can see I dash, doop, 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 and then there's a knock up at the end. Does a little bit of damage, and then his ultimate is a square Dharmic Pillars region that, if you're on any of the lines of the ability, you take tick damage, and it's actually one of the highest damaging abilities in the game. Technically speaking, if you were to take every single tick, just to show you that with no items bought, he took about 3,000 damage. Now, again, that's if you take every single tick. They're not going to do that. But yeah, if you're in the middle of the ability, it's not going to do anything to you. But yeah, it does also slow if you try to walk over it as well. Generally speaking, a good combo to use as Ganesh is try to predict where they're going to move, hit them with the ult, and then once they are about to walk on the edge, you can hit them with the knock-up to make sure they take more ticks of that damage. To really maximize your DPS on him, though, and your teammates' DPS, if you can, use your one on minions or gods. It hit as many things as you can with the one. Yeah, the enemy god with the one. Then you hit the ult, and you hit the 3, and you can see they took extra damage because they had those stacks of the 1 there. And then, of course, like I said, you use the 2 to silence them when they're attacking your enemies. You can just keep it on them, and it's a quite long silence too. It's pretty annoying and pretty nasty. Items on Ganesh, you want aura items for the honestly, and then you also want prot shred items like Stone of Binding. Stone of Binding is a must on him because of how easily you can proc it with this too. As long as they're in front of you, you just spin around in a circle. You're applying it like crazy. So I recommend getting items like Sentinel's Gift for the aura prots, then a Gauntlet of Thebes because he stacks this item super fast due to his passive. After that, you're going to go straight into a Stone of Binding, and then the same general build idea, Pridwin. Here, I actually do recommend getting a damage item, like a pen item, just because he uses pen really well. Consider like a Spear of Death, Spear of the Magus, and Divine Ruin, and then finish off with another damage item, because you're not going to need that many protections, because you're giving your teammates protections. And that's Ganesh. Let's go ahead and move on to our fourth character. Alrighty, our next character is Sylvanas. I like putting Sylvanas on this list because it teaches you some new mechanics like healing, but also it starts teaching you how to get good mechanically at some of the support abilities. Now, generally speaking, in Smite, the support class or the Guardian class specifically has some of the least demanding mechanics of any class, of any other class in Smite. Yet there are some characters like Sylvanas who do have some of the most hard abilities to hit in the game, that being his third ability, the pull. It has a really short hitbox, if I just show you real quickly. And it's a really delayed ability. If I use it like this, you can see it takes a second to go off. And it has quite a bit traveling time as well. So it's pretty easy to avoid. However, if used right, this character can be pretty nasty because he has a lot of really nice combos that help out in the long run when you're learning support. Another big thing is a lot of times players will play a character like Sylvanas and play him really far backline because he does have ranged auto attacks, when you could actually play him really aggressive, in fact, and that's where you'll get a lot more benefit. Now, starting off with just what his abilities do, Sylvanas' first ability is a mana flower that he can either throw down and then let it bloom, which releases an area granting extra MP5 to any ally that stands in it. This does not stack if you have 2 mana flowers, but it is a nice thing. Now, an enemy god can shoot this flower and break it, but if they do, they receive a debuff of protection reduction. That debuff also gets applied if you just hit an enemy god with the flower. And if you do hit them with the flower, it does not leave behind a flower. It just breaks immediately. His passive is whenever you hit an enemy god with an ability, or even sometimes just use an ability like your 3. If you just used your 3, it'll create a little seed. Then when you pick up the seed, it'll give you a little bit mana back, and then it'll also restore some of your cooldowns. Late game, when you spam your abilities and have cooldowns, you're spamming abilities like crazy. His second ability is an AoE that does tick damage to enemy gods and minions, and then it heals allied gods while also granting them an insane number of protections. You're getting 30 of each for 5 seconds. His third ability is obviously that pull ability that also provides a stun when they are grabbed. And then lastly, his fourth ability is an AoE knockup that does insane tick damage and really high poison damage. As you can see, it's taking them down for quite a lot. And that's Sylvanas. Some really cool things you can do with him are obviously hitting the pull to pull somebody into your team, or if they're trying to get away like this, you can pull them back in, then hit the root, then hit the knockup, hit the 2. You're applying protections to your team, healing your team while also doing insane amounts of tick damage to the enemy, and then you're picking up your seeds, resetting your cooldowns so you can pull people even more and whatnot. Very fun stuff, obviously. Some other things you can do with Sylvanas is you can use him if you have some decent ward coverage on the map, or you just have good game sense. You can pull people through walls and really get the jump on them and set up for really easy kills with you and your team. Generally speaking, on Sylvanas, you can go a few different routes with how you want to build. You could build a little bit more healing route. However, I think on him, you actually want to really emphasize his procs a little bit more and go full like aura build with a Lotus Sickle in there, because he uses Lotus Sickle really well. I think he actually uses it the best out of any of the healer characters. Starting items, I think he actually doesn't want Benevolence, and he wants either Sentinel's Gift or War Flag, ideally. Benevolence is okay, but both of these benefit him a lot more, just because he likes the movement speed since he doesn't have a dash, and the attack speed is obviously very good on him since he has AoE ranged autos. Sentinel's Gift is just good if you want aura procs, but both of these are pretty good. Then for his next item, I think Gauntlet of Thieves is actually really good since he has so many ranged abilities. Or sorry, Prophetic Cloak is really good since he has so many ranged abilities, but Thieves is also good. Just go with your best judgment. You could get either or. After that, of course, we can get the Stone of Binding if you want that Prot Shred. Or you could go into the Lotus Sickle real early if you want. That's another option. And then after that, you can get the Pridwin. Obviously, Pridwin is a must-buy in every support right now. And then after that, again, the Stone of Binding if you didn't get it. Manticore Spikes is another good option, giving you MP5. And then you also have some healing items to look at that you can consider, like a Rod of Asclepius, granting you healing increase by 30%, plus cooldown reduction to you and your teammates. So you have a few options on Sylvanas. Relic choices, Blink almost every game, and then maybe a Sprint, just so you can get out, help your teammates get out. Bracer's good, Horrific's good, but Blink is a must-buy. I personally just go Sunder every game right now on most supports, just because Prot Shred is really good. So yeah, but that's Sylvanas, and now let's go ahead and move on to our last character. All right, and then the last character I'll be talking about today is Bacchus, which might confuse a lot of you experienced players as to why I'm bringing him up. But I actually really like Bacchus as a recommendation for newer characters to support in Smite, because it actually helps you learn a lot. Now, if you've noticed, each of these characters that I've talked to you about, I've talked about utility characters like Sylvanas who provide buffs to the team, healing to the team. I've talked about more CC and Peely focused characters like Ymir and Ganesha who can really help control team fights, you know, with walls and everything, but also stun lock and silence enemy gods. And I've also talked a little bit about engage with Ymir as well. But one thing that we didn't talk about too much is how to like really engage as support, or what that means. And Bacchus is a good option for that, because he teaches you how to engage, but also he dives so hard in that it can be hard to get out sometimes, which I'm a firm believer in. The only way to get better at something is to fail a bunch of times until you stop failing, or to make as many mistakes as possible until you stop making those mistakes. Now, Bacchus, when you jump in, you obviously don't have a jump out, so it makes him a little bit vulnerable in that regard, which is why I like him for newer players, because it forces them to make bad decisions, actually, which in turn makes them realize why it was a bad decision, and then it teaches them how to use it more strategically and stuff like that. So, like I just said, his 2, you can jump in, it lets you knock up enemy gods, does damage, but then it's on a 12-second base cooldown, which is obviously really nasty, because then you can't jump back out. Anyway, moving on. Bacchus's base kit is his passive. He gets his little meter. The more you drink or get god kills, it'll fill up the meter. At full, you'll get 30 power and 10% damage mitigation. And this will also interact with his abilities as well. Bacchus's first ability fills up his meter a little bit. He takes a drink, filling up the meter. This also provides him with 35 protections and 35 magical power at max level, and it heals him for a little bit as well. His second ability is that jump that knocks up that we talked about. And then his third ability is a slow plus anti-heal that will stun if you are smashed. If you are not smashed, which is that top bar on his passive, it will not stun. And then his last ability is a giant AoE ultimate that intoxicates enemies, which basically makes them move around all crazy like that. Cool stuff. So you can see he lacks a lot of real instant appeal. You know, he does have some utility, but his real idea is you're going to start fights for your team. You're going to create opportunities for your team, which is what makes him a really interesting support, because you're creating opportunities for your team while putting yourself at risk, which does encourage some bad habits. But overall, with the amount of mistakes you'll make, you'll inevitably learn some really good tips from that as well. So your basic combo on Bacchus obviously is to get your one applied. Then you jump in, get the knock up right into the stun while they're still in the air. Then you get them with the ult. Or you can just jump in and ult immediately, then do all that. Either way, order of operations doesn't super matter. But as you can see, he does quite a bit of damage. He's a very burst guardian. And he's also pretty tanky with that one. So, yeah. Builds on Bacchus is pretty straightforward. I actually don't recommend War Flag. He doesn't really need the attack speed or movement speed. And his teammates, generally speaking, won't benefit too much from it on him. He wants Sentinel's Gift or Benevolence, ideally. Between the two, he prefers Sentinels. Benevolence is good, but if you want to go Blink on him, then you can't really go Compassion, which is a pretty good item. And then Heroism is okay if they have stuns, but generally speaking, he wants Sentinels. After that, I really like to go Prophetic Cloak on him, just because this item encourages engaging and diving in, and which he obviously wants to do. Then straight into a Stone of Binding. Obviously, you know the drill by now, into the Pridwin. And then from there, kind of similar to what we said on Ganesha, where we go straight into some damage items, like a penetration item, and then last item, E-Staff. So we're talking like Spear the Magus into an E-Staff. Now, you don't need Divine Ruin on him, obviously, because his 3, like I said, has built-in anti-heal up to 40%, which means you just straight out don't need to get an anti-heal item because you already have one. There it is. I could not find it. Now, just to show you what Bacchus can do, let me stack my items real quickly. So you can see with what his base damage looks like on a squishy, even with a tank build. And then obviously we get damage Pridwin just because he uses that better. And then we'll go ahead and get Fire Blink. Now, one tip I recommend as Bacchus is to blink in when you can, actually, instead of jump. Now, his jump is one of the best engages in the whole game. But if you blink in first, then it saves the jump to allow you to get out. So let's say we blink in, get the stun, then we get the knock up. You can see if we blink in, then get the stun off on them, you can get a lot of the ticks of that fire blink off if you go fire blink. Or you just get to save your jump so you can still get out. Now, as you saw, we did quite a bit of damage to that Neath, but let me go ahead and kill her real quickly to show you what a normal Bacchus combo would look like without the blink. And so we're talking about just the item effects plus his ultimate and whatnot. So we'll wait for that to go down because he does a lot of base damage as a tanky guardian. And obviously we do have these 2 damage items, but you can still see we're almost protection capped as well, which is really nice. So we jump in, get that burp off, and then we hit him with the ult. You can see they are pretty much almost dead. If we had any teammates there, they would be dead by now. Let's go ahead and just finish off just for fun. There we go. Yeah, Bacchus is a really fun character. He is definitely not super beginner friendly. You will die as him, but that's why I like recommending him to beginners, because you need to learn. The only way to get better is by trying to make those opportunities come up and then seeing when they don't work and then figuring out why they don't work. Because at the end of the day, only you can answer that question. Like, you have to look back at your games and say, hey, how come me jumping in there into 5 people didn't work out? Versus, hey, how come me jumping into 1 person with my team around did work out? You know, stuff like that. But that's the video. Hopefully you guys found it somewhat helpful. I know this is a bit rushed, but I've been really busy with work this last 2 weeks. Got a lot of last minute projects that came up and whatnot. So it has been a very hectic week for the content creation. I will be making a lot more in-depth videos next week, hopefully. So stick around for that. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all later. Peace out. Have a great day and stay beautiful. Goodbye.